Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Week 3 wraps up with an exciting matchup between the Lions and the Ravens. Listen to these streaks from Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. You can find all these live odds bet on these streaks in the Hard Rock Bet app. Here's the thing. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's recorded 30-plus receiving yards and a touchdown following a win 5 times in a row. Lamar has rushed for 58-plus yards in 5 consecutive Week 3 games. Here's the thing. I like the Lions this week. I know the Ravens beat them a couple years ago. I know the Ravens dominate NFC teams. I'm going against the trend. So if you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you can get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. What is going on, everybody? Happy Sunday night, and congratulations to the Chiefs for getting off their winless streak. Now get a big win against the New York Giants. But before we talk any football, subscribe to this page, baby. We go live after every primetime game. We'll be here again tomorrow, Monday Night Football, big game, Lions-Ravens. So also a podcast, Spotify, Apple, 3 and Out with me, John Middlekauff. Subscribe. Appreciate everyone for firing on in and watching our stuff. But we have a lot going on. I mean, I was going to pay homage and my respect to how much I'm just blown away. Like, I have more respect for Patrick Mahomes in, like, this turmoil in these tough times than I do when he was winning MVPs and throwing 45, 50 touchdowns. Obviously, the Travis Kelce and Andy moment kind of went viral, and to me, nothing sums up the National Football League and just, I would say, the sport of football in general, like that moment. But I do think the theme, and maybe it's just the way the game ended, was this Russell Wilson situation. It feels like we got to pull the pin and pop the balloon here and just go with the player that you threw in multiple times, and every time you bring Jackson Dart in and Russell would run back, you would hear the boos. So we will talk about this. And honestly, I got to give the GM and just the Giants front office a little credit. Don't hate their entire roster. I mean, they got some players. And I thought we'd do a little something that we did last year on our Sunday night shows, is play a little overrated, underrated, kind of go around the National Football League. Me and Colin, as we do every day or every Sunday, went live, recorded a podcast after the afternoon game. So I'll rehash some of that stuff and hit on some other things that I did not talk about. But before we dive into some football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, GameTime. Best ticketing app in America. Do you want to go to an event? Do you want to go to a concert? Do you want to get out of the house and do something fun? You want to watch your team? Go to an NFL game? Go to a college game? I was sitting watching that Oklahoma-Auburn game. I'm like, God, this looks pretty fun. This looks like a pretty fun event. If you want to go to one of these big college games, that Texas-Oklahoma game actually got a lot more interesting. I might have gone to the Red River rivalry a year too early, because this year feels like it's shaping up to be pretty awesome in Dallas. So if you want to go to one of these games like that one, we got you covered. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, we're talking $20 off. Redeem the code and download the GameTime app today. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I think we just got to talk about the elephant in the room after that game. Most people thought the Chiefs would win. Not shocking that they did. Obviously, some stuff came out about them, and we'll dive into in a second. But I think the main story of this, like Russell Wilson, and we were talking about this before we hit record here, Russell hasn't changed. This is the same guy for the last several years. His days of being an elite playmaker, scrambling around, are done. He doesn't move as well. Obviously, from a a explosive play standpoint. They don't really exist if you're not playing the Dallas Cowboys. That lollipop throw is just not going to work against credible, real teams, especially when they go, well, you got Malik Neighbors. We don't really feel a threat with anyone else, so we're going to take him away. And that's what they did tonight. And especially he's underthrowing balls. The one that was picked in the corner of the end zone that had a massive 6-point swing because then the Chiefs got a field goal out of it. And the other play where it also should have been picked off, and about 7 people, multiple defenders, Malik Neighbors, were all lying on the ground. I'm thinking, I hope no one's dead because of Russell Wilson's accuracy issues right now. But this is not on Russell Wilson. This now falls on the coach because it goes to the old adage, you're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. What we've seen out of Russell Wilson year in, year out for several years now is this. No one is surprised. And I think historically, it was easy to go, the fans don't know what they're talking about. You can't listen to them. Bill Polian famously said, if you listen to them, you will be sitting with them. Well, every time tonight that he would go to the bullpen with Jackson Dart, it was almost like he was acting like he was Cam Newton or Kyler Murray or Michael Vick. Jackson Dart's a passer, not a runner. So to bring him in just for a play, to me, is kind of head-scratching. And he's not a player like, let's say, a high draft pick, Trey Lance or Anthony Richardson, a guy that hasn't played very much. You'd be like, well, he only has 13 games under his belt in college. He needs the reps. No, he's like a 3-year starter in the SEC. Started a ton of games at Ole Miss, rattling off wins against other SEC opponents. Like, he has a lot of game experience. He's a ready-made player. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to be ready-made in terms of success, but this is a situation you can't redshirt a player like Patrick Mahomes. We always hear that. Well, because it's become very in vogue right now to talk about developing quarterbacks. You got Tom Brady chiming in. You got Peyton Manning chiming in. You got Kevin O'Connell chiming in. A lot of people with different takes. And I understand it. It's easy to blame the organizations and the teams. Is there a right or wrong way to develop a guy? Andy and the Chiefs were able to sit Patrick Mahomes because they were winning games. And Alex Smith, the guy that made like $250 million in the NFL, was having the best year of his career. The Kansas City Chiefs, the year that Patrick Mahomes redshirted, hosted a playoff game. Keeps everyone quiet. If they had been a 5 or 6 win team, you know what people would have wanted Andy Reid to do about 3 or 4 games in? Put the kid in the game. But the moment you start teasing people by running Jackson Dart in, people go, oh, leave him in. Let him run a series. But they treated him like, I don't know, he was an athletic running quarterback. Now, he is an athletic player, but they drafted Jackson Dart to be a thrower, to just run the offense like a Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, he's going to make plays with his legs, but if you watched him in the preseason, and listen, preseason success doesn't translate to regular season success, it was throwing the football. So I felt like Brian Daboll did that move to kind of keep everyone on his back, but then it backfired because Russell Wilson, who everyone has watched his career for a decade and a half, they understand the ebb and flow and where he's at now. No one wants to see that anymore. And I don't blame one person in that building who pays a ton of money. These games are not cheap to go to spend their Sunday night, especially on the East Coast. All these people got to go to work. They're not going to get home till midnight or 1 o'clock to watch a guy consistently just throw balls up at the moon where Kansas City Chiefs defenders hitting them in their hands. Like, we don't want to watch that. We just drafted a kid in the first round. Our franchise is going nowhere. And here's the other thing. I saw a lot of players on the Giants who are probably going to end up winning 4 or 5 games that Andy Reid and Brett Veach would die to have on their team. That's the thing with the Giants. There are some bad teams. The Titans, they look atrocious. Like, they are really, really bad, right? If you watch the Titans play, you go, not a good football team. Not many guys on that roster I'd want on my team. I'm watching the Giants going, do you know how many guys they have that would start for the elite team? Do you know how many guys the Buffalo Bills or Howie Roseman would want off that roster onto their team? You know what really hit me tonight? With Abdul Carter, they're moving him off the line. They're moving him stand-up linebacker. Can you imagine trading a first-round pick to pick a hybrid wide receiver corner who, again, I'm pro Travis Hunter. But in what world in a front office, I don't care how many defensive linemen you have, I do appreciate and come and applaud the school of the New York Giants won Super Bowls when they did this. You can never have enough. Take another defensive lineman. Take another pass rusher. Taking Travis Hunter over Abdul Carter and trading a first-round pick for next year on top of that looks kind of crazy. You know why? Because Abdul Carter looks like he's going to be a pretty special player. Cam Scatterbu, like, dude's a stud. We know how talented Malik Neighbors is. Brian Burns, play for my team any day. Dexter Lawrence, monster. Like, they got impact guys, not like good impact. Even Kayvon Thibodeau, who I've never been the biggest fan of, thought he was a little bit stiff edge rusher. Even Collinsworth tonight saying, you know what? He does look a lot better this season. Moving pretty well. Looked a little more physical, a little more explosive. Just looked good. I mean, I can't deny it. And this team doesn't come close to winning this game. You know, it's just, why are you going to go down with Russell Wilson? This was a perfect moment. In this game, you literally put Jackson Dart in the game. And then you took him right out. I can't comprehend it. I don't understand it. And I think Brian Daboll wanted to show that he's got some balls, but like wasn't exactly going to put it all out there. Because at the end of the day, what were you risking? Losing again? That's exactly what happened. And I feel bad for Giants fans. And I don't see how you go back at this point. Like, I don't see how you look the camera in the eye, the fan base in the eye, your owner in the eye. It's not about the schedule. It's not about the level of competition anymore. It's you simply can't roll this guy out any longer when you have this young player that you just drafted in the first round. End of the day, if he's overwhelmed, take him out and put Russell back in. There are no feelings involved anymore. No one cares. He has to play, or you're going to lose everybody. And let's face it, lose any bit of reputation that you still have around the league. Tonight, I thought was an embarrassment for the Giants the way that all was handled. And on the flip side, I think it's easy to watch any player in any sport put up huge stats and go, that guy's incredible. That guy's awesome. We see it all the time. Guys that hit a bunch of home runs, guys that score a bunch of points, guys that make plays in the NFL. But what happens when you're not playing well? How do you handle yourself? What happens when this is a team sport? This isn't tennis. This isn't golf. Your teammates either let you down, get injured, so you have guys who are worse. How do you handle that? And I'll be honest, I have more respect watching Patrick Mahomes in 2025 for his game, for him as a competitor. There was a play tonight. I forget, it was in the first half or maybe earlier in the second half, where he throws the ball behind him, right? Live ball, fumble. And obviously, it looked like the Giants had an opportunity to not only pick it up, but take it to the house. And it bounces off one guy, lands into a Giants hand, and all of a sudden goes, did the Chiefs just recover that? Where did that wide receiver or running back come from? And then they kind of show the replay, and Collinsworth goes, that was Patrick Mahomes. That has to be one of the best plays of his 7-8 year career. He's 30 years old. He's definitely never made a better play at the age of 30. That was incredible. And I understand that he's held to this crazy high standard. And listen, I don't agree with everything Nick Wright says about the state of the Kansas City Chiefs, but there is no disputing he is held to a different standard than everyone else. And his numbers, and he hasn't been at times as good over the last year and a half as some of the other top quarterbacks, i.e. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, in the regular season. But there were plays made tonight, just like there were plays made in the first couple games when they are winless, where I go, I would go to war with that guy every day of the week and 10 times on Sunday. And if I'm a Chiefs fan, the pride I take in my quarterback, and nothing, I would say, sums him up and symbolizes his impact as much as that recovered fumble that should have been Giants ball. But Patrick Mahomes ripped it out of the fucking guy's hands and kept possession. It was, we talk a lot about instincts and football IQ. And one thing I'll never forget when I was working in the NFL, I was writing up a guy that I actually had uh, a relationship with. And I remember writing something about, he struggled in school. We got to be careful about, teaching him, blah, 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 when it comes to intelligence. And they're like, well, is he a smart football player? I'm like, yeah, he's actually very smart football wise. He's just bad in school, just has issues. And they're like, well, we don't care. Like, what's his football IQ? I'm like, it's through the roof. Really smart. Learns football well. Like, that's all that matters. And football IQ in just whatever your sport is, the IQ in your given sport for your position, for whatever you do, is all that matters. And obviously, Patrick's a smart guy, but his football IQ is through the freaking roof. And when you have a guy with his skill set, I mean, he made a couple plays tonight where it's just like, I think there was a stretch where he threw a PI ball. He meant to throw it up to the moon, hoping he could draw a PI. And then there was a pass on the next play with like 7 seconds left where clearly they ran like a quick sprint out and the option wasn't open and he kind of dirged it, to the white, the out of bounds line. And I just think he knows exactly what he's doing. And there was another play where Thornton, who had a great catch at the end of the game, who actually is a pretty interesting player. I didn't know that much about him, where they ran like a quick fake wide receiver screen and then basically beeline him up. He's kind of running like not quite a flag, but not exactly a go route, kind of running like an angle route, and clearly was open. And I think Patrick assumes because the read must be to look back immediately after a couple steps, and he didn't look. And Patrick kind of laid it a yard in, and you could tell Patrick's like, you got to look around. I just think he's mastered this offense. Now, it's a team sport. He doesn't have Tyreek Hill. He has an older Travis Kelce. That moment tonight with Andy Reid when he bumped him, nothing is more football than that moment. One, the respect Travis has for him to let his coach come up to him. Do you know what it takes to get? How often in Andy Reid's 25-year career have you seen him screaming at players? I bet you could count it on two hands. Honestly, and when he's been on the Chiefs, it probably struggled to make it past one. Now, he screamed at Travis twice, and he knows, like, to light him up because Travis' emotion for the team is really important. But that moment of him screaming at him, for I'm not exactly sure. I'm recording this after the game, so I'm sure he'll be asked about it. Travis will, and they'll talk about it. They'll probably laugh about it. But Andy bumps him, and Travis keeps lighting. Like, there is no growth without confrontation. I think it's like that in the business world. I think it's like that in the football world. I was thinking, like, can you imagine in the NBA if a player bumped a coach? That coach would be immediately fired. I mean, especially a player of Travis's accolades, right? First ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest players in like the history of the sport, definitely at his position. But it was completely normal. And even Andy said when he was being interviewed, like, I'm trying to light a fire under our guys. I'll do whatever it takes. And that moment to me kind of summed up this Chiefs team, right? That they needed kind of a kick in the ass. It did not look pretty. The Giants are not good, yet the game was like 6-6 at the time. The Chiefs had nothing going for them. I also think there's this weird spot is Travis was treated unlike any player that Andy Reid, like, he doesn't do this. They don't do nostalgia in the National Football League. Andy doesn't just give you contract extensions when it's clear you're nowhere near the same player. But he kind of got treated like you would in the NBA. It's based on your resume, how much you've meant to this franchise. You've helped us win some championships. It was clear a couple years ago he was trending down. In the NFL, even if you're a Hall of Famer, typically you get cut. Typically you don't get a contract extension. But because of his importance, not just to the organization, but to the quarterback, to the area, like he kind of got a special deal. And I think, they don't do that ever. And that's probably never going to happen again to the Chiefs for any guy not named Patrick Mahomes. But they do need him to at least make some plays. And he did a couple times. And I've been saying this for a while. He's not washed, but he's nowhere near the player that he was in the prime of his career. But he still can make winning plays. He didn't last week when the timing was off and the ball was tipped and dropped. And as Stuckey told me on Thursday, that like the analytical community had that as like a 10-point swing. So it's like one of the biggest plays so far of the year in terms of negative impact. Obviously, it was a disaster. And listen, the Chiefs just need to keep their head above water because uh, they have good defensive players. They have excellent coaching. They will get some reinforcements with Rasheed Rice and whenever Xavier Worthy can fix this shoulder. And because of those guys, MIA, suspension, injury, like they have got Thornton more involved. So ideally, he can be an impact player with those guys moving forward. Juju is just slow, steady, wins the race. You got Pacheco, you got Kareem Hunt. You know that Veach and Andy will give the thumbs up if there is any sort of trade available that makes sense. But this is not a team that was just going to tap out and say, see ya. Now, this is not going to be 13, 14 wins, but you'd have to be, high on crack cocaine to think that they're not getting to double digits. Like, that's happening. The other thing is the AFC has opened up pretty well for them. Denver's 1-2 and has a lot of issues. Now, we'll dive into Denver here in a second. Their schedule moving forward got some opportunities to get some wins. Pittsburgh's just not good. Bengals are screwed without Joe Burrow. So besides like the Chargers, the Ravens, the Bills, you look at the AFC, it's not exactly, you got Daniel Jones. It's not exactly murder's row. In fairness to Daniel Jones, he's playing well. But I do feel pretty good about the Chiefs' big picture, just in terms of like, if you think they're missing the playoffs, you're crazy because they're not. So big win. The Giants fall to 0-3, and anything less than Jackson Dart being named the starter this week, just it's going to cause riots outside Brian Dable's office. I thought we'd play a little game. I did this at times last year, and I was like, let's bring it back for tonight. Let's play a little overrated, underrated. We'll just kind of fire around the NFL, hit on some different things. We'll start with the 49ers. And you know what's overrated? Having healthy players. Nick Bosa gets injured earlier in the game. He told Kyle Shanahan, I think I tore my ACL. Now, the doctors told him, you don't have a torn ACL, at least based on our structural test that we can do outside, which usually tells you yes or no. But Nick Bosa disappears. And at one point during the game, Mykel Williams, the dude they drafted in the top 15 from Georgia, also disappears. So you lose Nick Bosa, Mykel Williams, Mac Jones by the end of the game can barely walk. You're like, the Niners, this is just, how are they going to win? They get a safety in the end zone. They're losing with like 3 minutes to go. You're like, this is a disaster. And then what happens? This is why you pay a lot of money for coordinators, especially when you're an offensive or defensive head coach and you're calling the ball. You need your ownership and your franchise to go, who do you want that's the best in the business? We will pay a premium for. The Eagles have been doing this for a long time on defense. They currently do it with Vic Fangio. It's like, hey, we need Robert Saleh. What's it going to cost? A lot. Okay, here's $5 or $6 million a year. Let's hire Robert Saleh. Who comes up with the game-winning pass deflection? Fred Warner. Niners drive right down the field. Mac Jones gimping around. He's got, a brace on his knee because it's a sprained knee. He can barely walk. McCaffrey's just banging off people. You got Ricky Pearsall making way more plays than Marvin Harrison. I've told this story to a couple people. I told it tonight before to my crew. I'll never forget watching an interview. I think it was with Joel Klatt, and he was sitting down with Marvin Harrison and Marvin Harrison Jr. And he asked, like, what's the difference between you and your son? And Marvin, I don't want to say it was tongue in cheek, but it was a lighter interview, like they were having fun. But he kind of got serious. He said the one main difference is when I don't get the ball, I am F-bombing Peyton Manning in the huddle, and I'm screaming at our offensive coaches. Get me the rock. Like, my son won't. Doesn't really care. And I had a wide receiver coach last year tell me that, I like Marvin Harrison. Who doesn't? You just watch his tape at Ohio State. He's really, really talented. But most of the guys he's going up against on a weekly basis from Rutgers, from Maryland, are not going to play in the NFL at corner. And he's going to get to the NFL, and the guy sitting across from him is going to be a 29-year-old with 2 kids, drives a Range Rover, lives in a mansion, and has been to multiple Pro Bowls. Not the fake ones, but the ones that you get invited to directly when the season ends. Now, you might choose not to go, but you are a true Pro Bowler. And how's Marvin going to handle that guy? Because what's his great skill? Like you look at Malik Neighbors, he is a physical freak, super explosive. Marvin's a great route runner. Well, he's kind of like got a meek personality, doesn't really care. Well, let's pick a couple great quote unquote route runners. Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams. When I think of those guys, I think dog. Absolute bat. Look at Keenan today. It's like 35 years old, still making plays, kicking ass, and taking names. I watch Marvin Harrison. He drops the ball. He's like, and you know who's been taking a lot of shit, and I will defend, is Kyler Murray. They go, Kyler just doesn't really want to. If I was Kyler, I wouldn't want to throw him the ball either. Yet every guy that gets in for the 49ers, whether it's Purdy or Mac Jones, like, get Ricky Pearsall the ball. Because every time I saw that ball in the air, you know who I thought was going to come down with it? Ricky Pearsall. No different when the ball's thrown to Trey McBride or to George Kittle when he's healthy. You think when the ball goes up to those two guys, they're coming down with the rock. Because it's me versus the DB for the football. DeAndre Hopkins hasn't been able to run in the force of 40 in like 10 years. But when that ball goes up, it's not a 50-50 ball. So when you hear people go, it's an 80-20 ball or a 90-10 ball, it's because that guy in his mindset, Anquan Bolden forever, you don't need to be some blazer to make plays. It's about being aggressive. Malik Neighbors, he's an aggressive player. You know, and I watch Marvin Harrison, and I just see like a guy that's like, that doesn't work. Not in a league with like Lenore. Dude's making a ton of money. He's a crazy motherfucker. He wants to dominate you. This is not, you're not playing Purdue. This is the National Football League. And I remember a buddy of mine that worked in scouting that's leading up to that draft, probably around the combine. He's like, Monty's going to take Marvin Harrison. He's not going to take Malik Neighbors. He's just, he wants to hit a double more than he wants to risk striking out for trying to hit a home run. There are no such thing as doubles. They don't exist. They just do not exist. Things change so quickly in the NFL with draft picks. We talk a lot about quarterbacks. When Ricky Pearsall was drafted, I have the receipts. I saw it. I didn't really have an opinion. I was like, I think this guy's pretty good, but seems like a bold pick. I don't know. But would I think he was this good a year later? And I'm not even counting getting a shot. No chance. Now I watch him like, dude might be a number one wide receiver. But no one would have said that a year ago. And everyone's like, Marvin Harrison can't miss. Everyone can miss. Literally everyone in the NFL can miss. From quarterbacks to kickers to wide receivers. There are no such things. There are guys with higher floors, especially once you become good. I say this all the time, like Patrick Mahomes. Like over the last 2 years, this is his floor. This is his floor, not his ceiling. This is his floor. So the difference between the great quarterbacks, like you're seeing Josh and Lamar and now Herbert, like you've seen the last couple, like that's their ceiling, and their ceiling's sky high. But like, what's your floor? And those guys' floors are really high, obviously, as well. But like most guys' floors are low. And I'm watching Marvin Harrison, like, I don't see it. I actually have gained some respect for Kyler. Is he perfect? No. In a perfect world, would you like better? Of course you would. Go find it. Godspeed. Good luck. You won't. So the Niners are 3-0. Don't quite know how. Feels like half their team's injured. Bosa told Kyle he thinks he's got a torn ACL. Not ideal, but hey, 3-0. Somehow they're in first place. And I would say this. Underrated today would be having your starting quarterback get injured and being in trouble. Because the Minnesota Vikings, who started Carson Wentz, won about 100-0. And the Washington Commanders, who were without Jaden Daniels with a sprained knee, started Marcus Mariota, who, great guy, never been a big fan of his game. Ran for a touchdown, threw for a touchdown, and they curb stomped the Raiders. So both of those teams, when you told me Carson Wentz and Mariota was playing, I get they're playing the Raiders. And I can't even, who the hell did Minnesota play today? They played, they killed somebody. It's been a long day. who did they play today? Minnesota. They played the Bengals, who had the backup quarterback as well. But that was a complete ass kicking. And anytime that you can win a game with your backup quarterback, they've earned their contract. So you win a game with your backup quarterback. If you're paying him 2 million, if you're paying him 5 million, to me, you've earned the contract. If you win multiple games, like you have with Mac Jones now, they're underpaid. Uh, I would say overrated, and I've been beating this drum forever. I have nothing personal against any of these individuals, this franchise in general. I'm indifferent to. I honestly root for their quarterback, Michael Penix, but the Atlanta Falcons, the celebratory championship standing ovation they wanted after a win last week was just I was like, yeah, maybe their defense is good. Bijan's a stud. Maybe they're just good. Well, they played J.J. McCarthy, who couldn't hit water if he was in a boat. And today I look up, it's like they're getting killed. Somehow that game like just stayed on my four boxes as I'm changing games. And every time I would look up, it was just got worse and worse. The rookie from Arizona's making plays. Final score 30-0. The Atlanta Falcons went to Carolina after everyone's like, this team's good. I, Even if they don't win the division, they could compete for the playoffs. And they go to Carolina, a team that everyone, I'm probably included in that, thought sucked, beat the living piss out of them. So there's just something about the Falcons. One takeaway I've had, and I've had some people DM me this. Michael Penix, listen, he's not playing well, throwing picks and just looks like shit. He is a deep ball. He's like a younger version when Russ was kind of good. He wants to throw bombs. Yet every time I look with Zach Robinson, he's having him like dink and dunk. Obviously, he can throw normal routes, but Michael Penix is like his defining attribute as a great college quarterback was pushing the ball down the field. Outside like what makes Jalen a very effective passer? Jalen Hurts. Outside the numbers, passes. Yet every time it's like he's dinking and dunking. Like, this is not going to work. Zach Robinson, not sure knows what he's doing because they fell in love with this quarterback when they started evaluating him and then worked him out. And then they're asking him a year and a half in to do something different than he did and excelled at in college. And let's face it, he was a controversial pick at number 8. Separate even from Kirk Cousins because a lot of people thought that was like pretty high for a skill set. I was pro, like I understood it. I thought taking him in the top 10, but you got to utilize what he does well, and they just do not. And obviously, Carolina just beat the crap out of him. I do think it's underrated. I think some guys can just run a scam, and once you become a coordinator, you just kind of get in that loop, and you just stay a coordinator. And sometimes you become a head coach. And it's like, well, maybe he's not a head coach, but he's just a coordinator for life. Whatever happened to be like, yeah, you probably should just be a position coach. You just coach linebackers, right? You should just coach DBs. Everyone likes Gus Bradley. Seems like a great guy. I would not want Gus Bradley as my defensive coordinator. Take him on my staff, good vibes, have him coach a position. You want to coach the DBs, you want to coach the linebackers, all for it. But like, I don't want you coaching the entire unit. I would say the same thing for Matt Eberflus. It's like I'm just watching Matt Eberflus. I understand the Cowboys do not have great defensive personnel. I'm not expecting them to have a top 10 scoring defense. But when you watch an NFL team, and there are guys, it was worse this week than it was against Russ because guys were literally just wide open. And I told this to Colin, and I'm not trying to shit on Caleb. You throw a bunch of touchdowns, it's the NFL. But there's a big difference in throwing touchdowns when a guy's covering and a guy's wide open. And guys were wide open all game long. Cole Kmet, DJ Moore in the back of the end zone, like, Caleb, right here. And listen, Caleb's throwing strikes, hits the guy. But is Matt Eberflus, whatever he's telling these players, whatever got lost in translation in his Chicago stint of being a head coach and being overwhelmed and everyone making fun of him, it's just not working. Because what I witnessed today was the most embarrassing fundamental defensive performance I've ever seen. It's hard in an NFL game. You have a blown coverage. It happens. Pee Wee football to the NFL. It'll happen every week till the history of time, till we stop playing football, which is hopefully not till I'm dead and gone. But when it happens every single play, no one knows what's going on. I've never understood this. When I hear coaches brag about, like, God, we're just working long hours. What's the point of not sleeping if no one knows what's going on? If whatever you're learning in this dark film room that you try to tell these guys Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning walkthrough, no one has any clue what you're. Who gives a shit that you slept 4 hours Monday through Thursday? What a waste of your life. So I mean that was really really embarrassing. It really was. Uh, I would say this. I might be wrong, and we might have to acknowledge the Denver Broncos are overrated. Now they do have a stretch of games coming up where they play. This is in no particular order, but Cincinnati, the Jets, the Giants, and the Cowboys. So the Broncos over the next month are going to get some wins. But part of being a really good team, and they lost obviously a very tight game where they had a late lead against the Chargers today that looked like one of the best teams in the league. And last week they lost to the Colts, who, I mean, I think have I saw a stat, something about how many points they have scored this year. It was newsworthy when they punted for the first time of the season in week 3. So the Colts are pretty good. They are having an excellent start. Daniel Jones is having an excellent start to the season. But part of being a really good team, and one that I even put a little money down to win the division, we got to beat the good teams as well as the shitty ones. And defensively, like they haven't quite made the plays that they did last year. And, Bo Nix at times leaves a little something to be desired. Now, he did have one dropped in the end zone that would have been a big swing touchdown, but he also has some guys wide open that he just misses. And there was a gap today when you watched Herbert play a series and then you watched him play a series. You're like, God, this is both these two teams, bunch of physical guys. They tackle well, bunch of team speed, good skill guys, obviously good coaching staffs. But and I tried to buy into the Bo Nix thing, but leaves a little something to be desired. And you have to wonder if there is a ceiling on this team. And let's face it, on the flip side, the Chargers, they beat the Chiefs, they beat the Raiders, and they beat the Broncos. So, I mean, if you're going to, on a path to winning the division, starting the season 3-0 against your division is pretty solid. They got to be feeling pretty good about themselves, especially getting the news last week that Khalil Mack, I mean, we'll see. They say a month. Maybe it will be a little bit longer, but it's definitely not lost for the season. You got to buy what Jim Harbaugh's doing because Chargers look good. Couple more. I do think it's underrated how much talent was on the field in the Eagles and the Rams game. I did feel like I'm sure everyone in Philadelphia that this new offensive coordinator, if the game would have continued at the rate in which it did in the first half and the second half, and Jalen and the offense was just anemic, if you told me that they fired the offensive coordinator in the morning, I would have believed you. The way Philly is, I understand they'd be 2-1. They're defending champs, but it looked that bad. And then, you know what he did? He just started calling passes to A.J. Brown. Pretty good idea. Why? The guy, as Joe Davis says, when he was calling the game, is a monster. And he just took over the game. And Jalen, what he does best, throw the ball outside the numbers. And it was a tale of two halves. And the Rams had to settle for a bunch of field goals in the first half, and it cost them because their lead, instead of being 30-7, was 19-7. And the Eagles flipped a switch, scored a couple touchdowns, and got right back in the game. Now, obviously, the defining play of the game is blocking that field goal. Jordan Davis running like he's Saquon Barkley. The athleticism and the talent, the blue chippers on this game with both teams, from Puka to Verse to Jalen Carter to Jordan Davis to A.J. Brown to, I mean, it was crazy how many high-end players were making high. Bond had a sweet pick early in the game. It was awesome. That game, the physicality, the plays being made, watching the Eagles flip a switch. My takeaway after the first half was like, it's pretty crazy that Sirianni, who's a Super Bowl winner, who just got an extension, who's an offensive guy. But like the offense is never his problem. They can always point the finger at him. And then, like, who knows? Maybe he told to start throwing to AJ. He's going nuts. Field goal's blocked, and he's celebrating. The visual when the field goal gets blocked, and they go to Jalen Hurts, who stoic feels like the understatement of the year. Doesn't even budge. He's just looking, walking. Sirianni comes like he's Saquon Barkley sprinting right by him. Nothing sums up the Eagles more than that. Jalen stoic, Sirianni going nuts. Jalen makes all the plays. Sirianni, gets the credit. I mean, it's his win-loss record, but that was a massive win for Philly, and that's one of those. If you're Sean McVay, you can't get much sleep. And there were a couple plays in there. There was a fourth down where they ran it behind a backup guard and they got stuffed. It's like I never understand offensive coaches, and Sean's a good example. He's one of the best offensive coaches in the league. He obviously grinds his ass off, putting together game plans, understands strengths and weaknesses. The Eagles' strength are these two guys from Georgia in the middle of the defense. So to me, if you want to get on their edges, some sort of misdirection, a lot of different options. But running it up the gut on them, unless you have Larry Allen and Jim Otto playing center and guard for you, I don't think it's a great call. And they immediately get stuffed. Now, it's easy to second guess any type play call, but that idea in that moment is kind of crazy. And the one thing I will give Sirianni credit for is when a guy gets injured, especially a high-end all-pro Pro Bowl guy like Lane Johnson, the backup for with quarterbacks, honestly, you're watching some of these backup quarterbacks come in, they can function. I mean, Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota, Mac Jones, these guys, imagine if we just added up the starts between those three guys. Like those guys have started a lot of games. They have a lot of game experience. Most times when you have a backup tackle, they've never been a starter. So the reason is they're not good enough. Now, ideally, they can just come in and patchwork a game, but the longer a backup has to play, the more they get exposed. So you bring him a backup tackle, and he is just getting killed. And then they bring up the backup's backup. One guy's probably more comfortable playing the left than the right. I don't know exactly the Eagles setup, but the Eagles are pretty ruthless. Like, it's why I thought the offensive coordinator might get fired. Like, this won't be tolerated. Like, they would never operate like the Giants. They would never be cool with, like, a Russell Wilson just throwing these balls over and over, week in, week out, and losing games. Eventually, a head would roll, and it would happen quick. So a couple series in, like, get that guy out of there, put someone else in there, and change the game. It changed the game. It obviously gave Jalen a little more confidence, and you just got to get your playmakers the ball. However that has to happen. When you have a wide receiver like A.J. Brown, you just force feed him the rock. And the thing with him, like, you don't need to throw go balls. Throw quick outs. Throw comebacks. Just get him the ball in a 4 or 5 yard radius and let him break a tackle. That's what he did. Play after play after play. And then you start giving extra emphasis to him. Devontae gets a little bit more open, and the passing game and the floodgates open. So congrats to the Eagles. That was an incredible comeback. It really was. And I think what made the comeback so cool, if you're an Eagles fan or watching that game, is how shitty they looked. I mean, they could not have looked worse. Like, it couldn't be going worse. They were getting worked. I mean, the yardage was whatever, basically 200 to like 40. That number does not do it justice. It looked way worse. And then it flipped just like that. Just a couple passes from Jalen to AJ, and then you're just off and running. Couple more. Pretty clear that a lead with Baker Mayfield playing quarterback on the other team is pretty overrated because he's 3 for 3. Now, granted, this lead, they were up 20-6. They were killing the Jets. And the Jets, it felt like, got a couple hollow touchdowns, but then the game flipped when they blocked a field goal. And the dude, I love it when something crazy happens, like a fumble or a blocked field goal, and the dude in full speed, every once in a while, the ball bounces the wrong way, hits off you, and the other team gets it. Sometimes it bounces perfectly right to you. You take it to the crib. And all of a sudden, you're looking up, you're like, the Jets are going to win this game? How? In what world? What? leads them right down the field. That's after, I mean, the Bucks, it feels like half the league got injured today. From carts coming out to hamstrings to potential ACLs to shattered ankles. The amount of injuries in the NFL through 3 weeks is pretty insane. But in this Bucks game, they lost multiple players, including Mike Evans. This is why in a draft, a good GM will tell you best player available is the way to go because you can draft like, well, we don't need a wide receiver. We don't need an offensive lineman. We don't need a defensive lineman. It takes an injury and sometimes two injuries for a group and a unit that is considered a strength to then be considered a liability or a weakness. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, Godwin's not playing yet, and Mike Evans is out. And it's like, oh, we drafted Emeka Ibuka, who had what 6 catches and 85 today, who just continues to be awesome. So, and Baker Mayfield has just got to be one of the more fun players in the league. And I'll just end on this. It's underrated how bad the Titans are. I refuse to bet on them today. I bet on them the last 2 years, the first couple weeks, and it's just not going to turn around. Brian Callahan, I'm sure there's so much stuff that happened today, so most people probably won't discuss it. But there was a moment where they were kicking, I think, a 57-yard field goal. There was a delay of game, and he had them still kick the field goal at 62 yards. It I forget now if it got blocked or he missed it, but then it led to the Colts getting in field goal range. It's like, what are you doing? It feels like Brian Callahan is really over his head. Seems like a nice guy. Obviously, comes from a football family, but I would say he's got being fired written all over him. You know, we talk a lot about Mike McDaniels getting canned. And listen, by the end of the season, is Mike going to be coaching the Dolphins next year? We would all probably bet against it. I don't think there's any debate over who the worst head coach is in the NFL. And it's got to be Brian Callahan right now. I mean, the Titans team is an atrocious watch. I mean, really, really bad. Like embarrassingly bad. And if you're the GM who comes from the Chiefs, you got to start going like, what? We just drafted this guy really high. This is a disaster. It really is. And on the flip side, it's kind of underrated how good Daniel Jones has been. Like every time you watch him drop back, kind of like roll over, step up, you'd be like, God, something bad, and then something great would happen. I mean, he is throwing ropes. They look for as bad as the Titans look. That's how good the Colts look. Like a well-oiled, well-coached, explosive offense. And the gap between whatever the way Daniel Jones is playing, he's like playing like a real high-end quarterback. And whatever Anthony Richardson was when he played for them the last couple years is as wide as the gap typically, like I was just saying, from high-end Lane Johnson typically to the backup. The gap is huge. And somehow they found their lifeline. Now, do I think he's going to eventually have a bad game? Of course. Like they're not going to go 15-2, but he looks like a real quarterback and a quarterback that can clearly run Shane Steichen's offense. When you have a division like the Texans are in shambles. I mean, CJ Stroud, that offense is broken. And we blame Bobby Slowick. It looks the exact same. I'm not saying Slowick wasn't the problem, but it doesn't seem like this guy's any better. Can't run the ball. Offensive line's in shambles. CJ gets worse. I'm not a huge believer in Jacksonville. We know the Titans are awful. I mean, this division's bad. So you go, God, we got Daniel Jones. We got a good offensive coach. We got one of the best running backs in the league. We now got Lou Amaruno, who's a good defensive coordinator. We got some pieces. Like, why can't we compete? Not even just this year, but for the next couple years. Like, would Daniel Jones accept 2 years, $80 million again? You know, I mean, that also factors in. You got Brian Daboll and Russell Wilson, and that ship's sinking like the Titanic. You got Daniel Jones resurrecting his career like he's Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold. Colts are just flying high like one of the most efficient offenses in the league. Football's crazy, man. It really is. You just never know what's going to happen week to week. Adios, my people.